All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Thursday, September 5th, right here on All In Horns. I'm Tanner Carlson along with Jake Jimerson, and this is all brought to you by Rogue Sports Media. And Jake, it is Michigan week, and I actually just finished up watching the sign stealing documentary on Netflix on Michigan. Just kind of, pump me up a little bit. It kind of got me going for this Michigan game as the Texas Longhorns are preparing to go to the Big House. We've got a great show. We've got Sark's comments to the media. Also, we've got a little bit of a week 2 top matchups that we are going to predict. And then also is the Texas fan base, and is there maybe a little bit too much hype for the Texas Longhorns going into this game against Michigan? We're going to get into all of that in this next 30 minutes. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Jake, how are you doing?
Wish I was where you are and not in my basement, but
I'm still in paradise. Not much has changed. Jake's still in his mom's basement. That also has not changed at all. So no, dude. Okay. So real quickly, before we get into anything, I got to mention this. So we decided to, we found this spot, and it is basically a fish pedicure that you get. You stick your feet into a fish tank, and fish eat your dead skin off of your feet and your ankles. And so my feet are all exfoliated from fish, just like swarming. There was probably about 20 fish surrounding my feet and ate all the dead skin off. It felt like vibrating socks. And then they get in between your toes and you giggle a little bit like a schoolgirl. Yeah, it was weird. It was a strange experience.
This sounds like animal abuse. Making them do that to your feet. That is.
Yeah. So, okay.
Right.
So, those little succulent fish that are like in your fish tank that you use to clean. So they're like that, except he said these are much more professional fish. They're from Turkey, and they work 24/7, and they're much better at the job at getting dead skin, cuticles, all the things off of your feet. It was a pretty incredible experience, I have to admit.
Yeah, we need to get PETA on the case, that they do have me blocked on Twitter.
For sure. All right. Well, hey, so speaking of, I want to just jump in and touch on this just for a moment. And the sign stealing documentary, you got a chance to watch it. What was your overall takeaway on it?
It didn't really present much information we didn't already know, but it was entertaining and it was a lot of fun to watch. And I was very intrigued by the Brohio, the Ohio State fan who was under disguise. That is something of legends when it comes to just the college football world. That's to me was one of the legendary aspects of that show.
Yeah. I mean, Ohio State-Michigan rivalry ran deep into that documentary. And okay. So here was kind of my overall takeaway on it, is that Connor Stalions is actually extremely good and diligent at what he does. He's just very good at recognizing patterns and signs from the other team. And I don't even know if it was the way he was going about it in terms of getting on opposing team sidelines and recording games at game. That obviously unethical. It's against the rule book. I'm not saying he didn't not do anything wrong. I'm saying just based on him being on the sideline and him recognizing patterns and the amount of work and detail he put into his work, pretty freaking impressive, dude. I mean, I was more impressed with his manifesto than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, more impressive than the other two sign stealing teams that the Longhorns will go against this year. OU and A&M steal the Longhorn sign for their for their hand signals. A little bit different, but I was much more impressed with Connor Stalions' sign stealing scheme than OU and A&M.
You make a really good point that OU and A&M have been stealing Texas's sign for as long as I can remember. They just put it upside down, which is strange, but they have been stealing Texas's sign for a while. So Jake, let's go ahead and jump into some Longhorn news. Coach Sark was taking media rounds today, and he was on a couple of national media outlets and just getting interviews. And basically his takeaway, he gave a lot of interesting facts about this Texas Michigan matchup. 3 consecutive years in the playoffs for the Michigan Wolverines. They are 41-3 in the last 44 games. They've got the longest win streak in the country at 16 games and have won 23 straight at home in the Big House. Texas travels to Michigan for a regular season game for the first time in program history. This is history on Saturday.
Yeah, and actually, another little fun stat that goes along with this, I'm not 100% sure this has been confirmed, but I believe this is most likely going to be the largest crowd any Longhorn football team has ever played in front of. Oh, the Ohio State game back in the national championship year was 105,000 and like 600 something, and then DKR maxes out at just about like 400 people less than that. And so I this should be the most amount of people that any Longhorn team in the history of Longhorn football has ever played in front of. So we'll get into some of the overconfidence stuff later, but this isn't just going to be a cakewalk of an environment for this team to navigate on Saturday. There's a reason why Michigan hasn't lost at home in a very long time.
Yeah. And Sark's comments were basically, hey, look, it's a privilege to be able to play on a national stage and be the head coach of the first Texas team going to Michigan to play Michigan there at the Big House. And so just that it's an honor to be part of a program like Texas, playing a program like Michigan in week 2, and just being allowed to do this for a living. He just seems really grateful. Also, you made a really good point when watching his interview. Dude looks like he's getting in shape. Good guy looks fit.
He's lost some weight since last year, that's for sure. I mean, he looks in great shape. It's funny, actually, I was reading one of the practice reports, and it was talking about how in shape this Texas team was, even compared to last year's team to this point. They just looked different, and they just seemed in better shape. But someone in that report had also mentioned Sarkisian looks the best he's ever looked while at Texas. He looks in shape and ready to go. And he definitely looked the part. You could really see it on the sideline Saturday. And then in this interview with Colin Cowherd, you could definitely see he's lost some weight. You could see it in his face.
Yeah. And he is the leading by example is probably the best way to put it, in terms of buying into the program, buying into the work that is necessary to create a national championship caliber team. And I think a lot of people are now considering Texas to be a legit contender. And there has been kind of a nationwide synopsis that Texas might handle Michigan fairly easily. The fan base also getting into the fact that Texas is probably the favorite in this game, and not really considering any other outcome other than a Horns victory. Jake, does the overconfidence, not only just with the fan base, but nationally, give you a little bit of pause for concern?
You know, I don't think the overconfidence is going to dwell over to the team. I'm not really worried about that. I think this team is focused on what they need to do. I just think the fan base, and even outside of the fan base, the media is starting to get a little overconfident, thinking Texas is just going to go in and win 31-10 or something against this Michigan team. You just look at the spread. The spread, I think when it originally opened up in the summer, was 3.5, 4 points, something like that. Then it opened up to 6.5, and now I think it's 7.5 or more for Texas. Yeah. On the road at Michigan. And I know Michigan didn't look great against that Fresno State team last year. Well, I don't remember the fan base being very confident after that Rice game last year going into Alabama. I remember the whole fan base was pretty doom and gloom, thinking Alabama was going to put down a whooping on the Longhorns, and obviously that did not happen. I expect the same from Michigan from the standpoint of the team that the Longhorns see on Saturday is not going to be the team that we saw play against Fresno State last week on Saturday. And I expect this to be a very close, grinded out ball game where both teams have, to me, clear paths to victories. And it's going to come down to which team executes the best to go down that path of victory, because I do think they're different paths for each team.
Yeah, and I think, just speaking on basically what it would take for Michigan to win this game. Obviously, a lot of momentum that goes into having the home field advantage there. But say they are establishing the run much better than we saw a week ago against that Fresno State team that you mentioned, and Edwards is going off and Mulling is going off, and they're actually capable of moving the ball down the field and taking the air out of the football while also establishing their dominance with the time of possession in this game. And driving the ball, say they have early in the game, they've got maybe 10 minutes of time of possession after, say, 2 or 3 drives. And then Texas, on the other hand, has gone maybe 3 and out, a first down, had to punt, settle for a field goal, whatever it is. And then that momentum is just building for Michigan. And we could see Texas in a hole early on. And if they can avoid kind of that initial energy and excitement, and Texas can take a little bit of the air out of the stadium, then I think Texas is going to have a much better second half. But those things tend to snowball, and they get worse and worse, and they build momentum. And we've seen Michigan dominate at home over the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, I think the start of this game is really important. I don't think either of these teams want to be trying to come from behind, but especially Michigan. If Texas could jump out to a 10-0 lead or a 14-0 lead or something like that, I think that would be huge. Not necessarily game over, but Michigan is going to want to control the time of possession. They're going to want to run the football, pass as needed. But if they're getting in a situation where they maybe have to throw it a little more often than they want to, or be trying to come from behind, I think that's going to put Texas in a really good spot to win this game. So that's going to be, I definitely think what the score is after the first quarter, if there are any points scored, is going to be really important. And whoever jumps out to that first, 2 possession lead or whatever it is, I think that's going to be a definite key. And I think maybe whoever takes the first lead could very well win the ball game.
Well, I think also talking about that type of slowly progressing type of game, I think we are in for a very slow, low scoring first half. I think the first half might be 1 or 2 points, or not points, but 1 or 2 scores for either team. I don't see it being, a 28-14 first half by any stretch of the imagination. I think we're probably looking at a 7-3 ball game or something along those lines going into the second half. Second half, maybe you start to expand that playbook. You're starting to see a little bit more mismatches. Adjustments are being made in the locker room at that break. And then maybe you see a couple of bigger things kind of pop loose in the third and fourth quarter. But I fully expect this to be a very close, hard-fought, maybe even an ugly game. I don't even think it's going to be all that pretty for whoever comes out winning this game. It's just going to feel like a dogfight.
Yeah, I mean, it's a top 10 matchup. It is, and it's 2 teams that I think both expect their defenses to have a lot of success in this game. As good as this Texas offense is, I have no doubt Michigan expects to be able to lock them down pretty well throughout the whole game with a defense that, you talk about Michigan week 1, the defense was not part of not looking good. The defense
Correct.
looked dominant against a Fresno State team that won, I believe, 9 or 10 games last year. So I expect this, like you said, to be a very almost ugly game, because when a game's low scoring, it's automatically ugly. But I expect both these defenses to be flying around. And I think, a key for the Longhorns is just going to be kind of what we've talked about before, using the pass to kind of set up the run, trying to get the RPO game going early. I think if they just come out and try to out physical Michigan, the offense could be in for a long day.
Yeah, I don't think that's where your bread and butter lies. I think you've got to start establishing and really lean on the speed you have on the outside. Jake, let's talk a little bit about if Texas is forced to punt early in this game. We only got to see 1 punt last week against Colorado State. Again, not a bad thing. You could have bigger problems. However, in Michigan, say your freshman punter's backed up on the goal line and that crowd is yelling at you. You get a false start. Now you're working with an even shorter field to punt with. They're sitting in the house. There's nerves. You're getting the shakes. You're looking like the Oklahoma State quarterback in the Big 12 championship game. What, if any, concerns lie in the punting game for Texas?
This is a game. This is the exact type of game where special teams can lose you a game. A blocked punt, a shanked punt, a punter dropping the snap. I'd almost say this is one of my biggest area of concerns going into the game, because we talked about it last week, being what's the punting game going to look like? Well, you don't get to find that out when you only have one punt. It was a good punt. It was a 39-yard punt down inside the 10. Great first punt. Punting at Michigan in the big house in front of 120,000 plus screaming fans that are all against you is going to be a lot different than punting against Colorado State in a game where you're already up and you're at home. And that's going to be something to look out for, because you talk about momentum early in the game. If Texas goes 3 and out the first drive and then gets a blocked punt, you could be in for a very long game where just everything goes wrong. And so that's definitely going to be something I'm looking at, because Texas is going to punt in this game. They're going to punt more than once.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree, Jake. Michigan, they have one hell of a tight end, probably one of the better tight ends in the country, and Colston Loveland. And he was a big part of that national championship winning team from a season ago. Matchup-wise, defensively, what kind of fits and stuff can he cause for the defense with – you've got an okay linebacking crew, I think, with Benda, Anthill, LaFau coming in and playing big minutes there at the end of the Colorado State game. But we haven't necessarily seen these linebackers get pressured or challenged really by a tight end with the capability and the skill set that Loveland has.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of those key matchups to watch, is regardless of who's covering him, whether it be Gilbo, whether it be a linebacker, whoever it is that is tasked with guarding him, that's going to be one of those key things to watch. Can you keep him, under 50 to 60 yards of offense? Because if you do, I think Michigan's passing game is going to not work out well for them. I mean, if you look at the box score last week, he was the majority of their pass catching yards. Right. And we'll talk about that more on Friday's episode. But that is definitely something I think this defense is going to be tested on in this game more than any other season. How do they deal with having to deal with an elite tight end that I think Michigan is probably going to try to force feed, because a tight end is already kind of that comfort blanket for the quarterback. And when you have one as good as he is, I think Michigan's going to look to go often and early to him when they are in passing situations. And for Texas, if you're running a zone, I still think you're going to have to make sure you're keying in on him. Make the receivers beat you. Don't let their best pass catching option in Loveland be able to just get a 3rd down and 8 over the middle without anyone on them.
This is where I'd really like to see Texas kind of experiment defensively and see some different packages, like a 3-3-5. Throw it out there. Just get an extra safety out on the field and use Taft, Makumba, and Derek Williams all on the field together, and have one of those guys designated to defend Loveland and just follow him around the field. I think one of your athletic safeties can have that responsibility and do a good job of not locking him up. It's hard to just lock him up, and especially a safety, probably not the best man coverage guy, but you got someone over the top, and you got your linebackers maybe in a zone sitting back there, kind of just shoving him on a route, putting their hands on him, making him uncomfortable, making the defense be felt while he's running routes and things. I think that's where we're going to see a different scheme for the Longhorn defense than what we saw a week ago, where things, like we've mentioned, were pretty vanilla.
Yeah, we may see some more of that dime package, especially if they can get him in passing situations. But that kind of goes back to the key of stopping the run. The tight end is always going to be more effective if they can run play action and things like that effectively, because the run game is succeeding. And so I think it all just kind of loops back to, at the end of the day, if the Longhorns stop the run, I don't think Michigan is going to score very much. If Michigan is able to have balance, I think they could probably put up more points than a lot of people are expecting.
No, yeah. Let's go ahead and flip this side of the ball real quick. In terms of establishing the run, Texas was able to do that, and I think we were both pleasantly surprised with how effective the run game was, but more so the offensive line for the Texas Longhorns. Coach Flood and Cam Williams, talk a little bit about what you're seeing out of Cam. Could he possibly be an NFL caliber tackle?
I already thought he was, at least as far as talent, but now he's starting, with the couple starts he had last year while Christian Jones was hurt. And then coming into this year, that first game was a great way to start hey, I'm ready to be an NFL offensive lineman and start at tackle, at the next level type of game. He was obviously named the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week, which is pretty good for the first game of the year. And he was dominant. And then kind of, I've gone back and watched the game, and I really tried to watch the offensive line pretty closely. And I've been a big DJ Campbell supporter. I just love the way he plays offensive line. But man, you're going to have a hard time keeping Cole Hudson off the field. Yeah. He was dominant in that game. He had a pull. I sent it to you in a text message.
It went Texas Twitter viral.
He had a pull in that Colorado State game where he cleans the edges clock. I mean, just knocks him out cold. And it wasn't just that play. If you look at his play throughout the whole entire game, I don't think he gave up any pressures, and he was absolutely dominating. I think you have to find a spot for him, whether it be moving Hayden Connor around or starting him over Campbell. I expect to see a lot of Cole Hudson on Saturday.
And you know what can be a lot of fun too is whenever you've got 6-7 offensive linemen, goal line packages tend to be pretty fun. Just get a lot of big uglies up there. Hey, Jake, with the last 10 minutes of our show, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about these week 2 key matchups throughout the college football world, and not going to give any predictions on Texas, Michigan. That will be tomorrow's episode. But let's go ahead, start off in a game with Arkansas and Oklahoma State. This is kind of an interesting one. Neither team is ranked, but both Oklahoma State is ranked. I apologize. However, should be a fun matchup.
Yeah, this is, they played Arkansas Pine Bluff. I'm just going to put that out there, but we've seen Arkansas teams struggle with some pretty awful teams early in the season in previous years, and they absolutely dominated that game, as they should. And so this is going to be where we kind of figure out, is Arkansas going to be a good football team this year, or is Sam Pittman gone? And I think this will be a good first look at that. At the end of the day, I'm going to favor Oklahoma State because they've been a much better football program than Arkansas has for the last several years. Arkansas's had one good year in the last decade. An Arkansas Pine Bluff game is not going to change that for me. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Arkansas went out there and either kept this closer than people expect, or were even able to pull out a win. But I'm going to go ahead and take Oklahoma State in this game.
Yeah, it's also at Boone Pickens Stadium in Stillwater, and that's never an easy place to play. One of the better atmospheres in all of college football. Oklahoma State favored by a touchdown and a half. Over-under set at 62.5. I would take the over, and I'm also going to take Oklahoma State to cover that 7.5-point spread. I think Oklahoma State wins by 3 touchdowns.
I'll differ you there. I'll take Arkansas to cover, but Oklahoma State to win. I think they're going to win by 7. If it's 7.5, I'm locking in at 7.5 because I think Oklahoma State's going to win by 7.
Well, Jake, here's the next game on our list, and it's a game that I think could spell big trouble for Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers. They are playing host to Appalachian State. Now, the only saving grace is that it is a night game at Clemson, and that crowd is a pretty crazy crowd, but I don't know if they're going to have a whole lot to be cheering about. And App State, they're the Cinderella sweethearts, baby. Everybody loves picking them in the upset. They come up big in big moments. They had a big upset last year against Little Brother. And so what do you think Appalachian State and their chances are at taking down the mighty Clemson Tigers?
I wish I knew a little bit more about App State this year. They've only played East Tennessee State, and they won 38-10. But a 17.5-point spread in that game is crazy to me.
Insane.
For Clemson.
Insane.
Klubnik has just not been the quarterback that I think anyone expected him to be coming out of high school as a 5-star recruit. We kind of talked about how a lot of Texas fans were mad that we missed out on him, and he just has not looked the part at Clemson. And I would definitely take Appalachian State to cover the spread, but I may even take a money line. The only reason I might not is it's a night game at Clemson. They need to have a get-right game. They did look on defense very good against Georgia for the first 2.5 quarters until finally when your offense is just going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, sooner or later the defense is going to crumble some. So I do think they'll win that game because of their defense, but I expect it to be, maybe like a 27-17 type win.
I actually think it's going to be more defensive, Jake, and I think Appalachian State is going to cover. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Clemson's defense is going to be too much for Appalachian State to score consistently. I just don't see a world where Appalachian State scores over 28 points in this game. However, I will take the under at 53. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, and I'm going to go ahead and take Appalachian State or Clemson to win that game, but in a close one, like 23-20, 23-17, something along those lines. All right, next game up, and let's kind of run through these a little bit quicker. First Big 12 game of the season, Baylor at Utah. Utah always a tough place to play, and that is a new Big 12 matchup between those two. What do you feel about the Utah Utes taking on Baylor?
I think Utah will win that game by 3+ scores. I don't see Baylor being able to hang in that, even if it was in Waco. But with it being in Utah, I would be shocked if Baylor even makes that game remotely close.
I think this will be a kind of an opening for the Utah Utes in the Big 12 to kind of make a statement early on in the season saying, yeah, not only are we coming in as the best team in the Big 12, we're gonna clean up the Baylor Bears pretty easily. I think this game's over near halftime, if not the third quarter. So I got Utah winning a big one there in Utah. Now, if it was at Baylor, maybe a little bit different, but I do think that crowd is pretty crazy in Utah. All right. South Carolina, Kentucky, SEC game. South Carolina, Jake, worth noting, only beat Old Dominion 23-19 a week ago in week 1. They need a get-right game, but Kentucky, no slouch.
Yeah, if you listen to the show, you could have got some free money by listening to yours truly. I said Old Dominion was going to keep that game close. I maybe didn't expect that close, but I felt confident they would cover the spread. But I think I like Kentucky a lot in this game, not just because South Carolina didn't look great, but because I think Kentucky's a pretty overlooked football program that has become a consistent 8-10 win team. And as I mentioned in our early prediction show about Texas this season, that's a game I'm scared of for Texas later on in the year. So give me Kentucky in that game and to cover.
Yeah, I also am going to take Kentucky. 10-point spread. They are favorites by 2 scores. Also an over-under of 42.5. I actually like the over in that game. I think Kentucky can put up some points, but I think South Carolina has the capability of putting up points. I just don't think they're really going to do it. Kentucky's never really been known for their just stifling defense. So I'll go ahead, take the over on that, and I'll also take Kentucky in the win, but I'll also take them as 10-point favorites as well. Let's go Tennessee, number 15 at number 24, NC State. It's a neutral-sided game. Tennessee is 7.5-point favorites, and there's a 60.5 point over under there for Tennessee in that SEC ACC matchup. Jake, how do you see that one going in a neutral sided game?
Yeah, again, neutral site games, big double thumbs down for me. But I like
NFL stadiums. I like the Cotton Bowl. Great, there are certain
the Cotton Bowl. There's one neutral site game that to me should always be a neutral site game, and that is the Cotton Bowl. I like Tennessee big in this game. I would do an alternate spread of Tennessee minus 14.5 if I can. I think Tennessee, I like the under in this game just because I think Tennessee is going to win something like 42-7. They're going to do all the scoring. NC State's not. I think this game is going to be like Georgia Clemson, but a lot uglier, a lot faster.
I think NC State is just one of those teams, man. They just are one of those teams that always stick around. They've always made life difficult for Clemson, even when Clemson had Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson. They're just one of those teams that hang in there with you. I don't see them winning this game, but I do think it's going to be close. And I think Tennessee's going to get hit in the mouth a little bit, but I think they respond and they come up with a big win. Boise State at Oregon. Is this a get-right game for Oregon? I mean, they kind of need this one.
It better be. They're 18.5 point favorites. And if they don't cover, I told you that I'm all the way out right now after picking them to win a national championship. If they do not cover this spread, I am beyond all the way out. The panic button's open, it's pressed and everything. Boise State gave up, 45 points to Georgia Southern. Oregon should have this game locked away by halftime to send a message that they are the football team that everyone expects to be this year. On paper, they are absolutely loaded. And that performance against Idaho is pretty embarrassing to only win that game by 10 at home. I expect them to come out motivated and roll in this game.
And their defense didn't look like it was the problem. So Jonty, for the Boise State running back, may not necessarily have the game he had against Georgia Southern. And if he doesn't, then I think Boise State could be in big trouble in that one. However, I'm not going to be surprised if Boise State hangs in there and makes it a game. And then that would be glaring signs for concern for the Oregon Ducks. All right, last one we're going to talk about, then we'll wrap up the show. Colorado at Nebraska, a classic rivalry there. Old-time Big 12 rivalry. Colorado at Nebraska. Nebraska is a touchdown and a half favorite in that one. What do you think of old Matt Rule and his early Cornhuskers, how they look with Dylan Raiola leading the charge?
It was only UTEP, but quite frankly, for Nebraska, being able to blow out a UTEP in week 1 like they did with a freshman QB was impressive. I thought they looked the best they've looked in a very long time. And I like Nebraska in this game, and I like them to cover. I think Nebraska is going to have the best year they've had in a while. I think they're going to go bowling, and I think they could very well be an 8-win type team. I think Matt Rule has that program moving in the right direction at the least.
I'm going to say this. I don't think Matt Rule's playing for clicks, baby. I think, I think this could be a Colorado-Oregon type smashing that we saw from last week. Wow. I don't know if it's going to be a 50-point victory for Nebraska. I just think Nebraska controls this game and dominates from beginning to end. I mean, I don't think the point spread is going to be that significant. It might feel that way for Deion Sanders and his Colorado Buffalo, though. They did not necessarily just shine and look uber impressive against the Bison of North Dakota State. So I think Nebraska wins this one by 4 touchdowns. All right, well, Jake, that is going to do it. Thursday's show is in the books. Tomorrow's episode, it is going to be a full breakdown, full scouting report on the Michigan Wolverines as the Texas Longhorns travel into the Big House. For Jacob Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. We'll see you tomorrow. Hook 'em.